Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Grace of a Military Child and Life podcast. Military families are not like your traditional family. They are strong, brave, resilient, and some of the most incredible people I know. My name is Gracie, a U.S. Army brat, and I am your host. I am honored to be able to give military family members like myself a place for them to share their stories and experiences in the military life. Stay tuned for this week's guest. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Grace of a Military Child and Life. Today, I'm here with Marine Corps spouse, Victoria. So, Victoria, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Hi, thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. So, tell me what it's like being a military spouse for you.
So, I have kind of an interesting story because I was an active duty military spouse to a Navy fighter pilot. After his service, we actually got divorced. And a few years later, I met my current husband, who is a Marine veteran. So I was an active duty Navy spouse. Now I'm a Marine veteran spouse. And I mostly love it.
Yeah.
Mainly, I love the community of people. So it's just such a great community in both cases. And it makes you feel a part of something really special.
Right. And that's the big thing, that community aspect of having somebody that you can call even, on the other side of the world at any given moment. And you have these people that you're surrounded by, maybe not physically, but, they're always there for you, no matter where you are. That, in along with, just meeting people. It's so easy to make friends.
Yeah, I feel like once you have that in common, there's already a bond. Like you already, have someone who can help you out if you need something, and people just kind of open their doors to you.
Right. Yeah. It's so, once you have that bond, it's literally so easy to make friends with someone. And even now, separated from the military life, you walk around, just the city or something, and you can say, oh, they look like a military family member. Like you can kind of pick them out easily.
Oh yeah. Oh, I always said that. Like I can see it from a mile.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally true.
Yeah. So what were some of the experiences that you've had, being an active duty spouse, but then kind of transitioning into that veteran spouse role as well?
So I was married for 10 years in the Navy. And my husband was a Navy F-18 pilot. So we lived in Florida, Mississippi, Virginia Beach, and then DC. And during that time, we had two daughters who are now 9 and 10. And I also wrote my first two books during those years. The first one was a poetry collection about my experiences as a military spouse called When the Men Go Off to War. And so that whole life really impacted my creativity and the work that I did. Fast forward to today, I still live in the DC area, and I'm still writing. And my new book is kind of a reflection on all of these years, not just those active duty years, but then the post period. It's called Homefront, and it's a short story collection about how the military and war impacts women in different ways. So I think I feel like both of those things have really impacted my creative life, but then also like my life as a mom, because I have another daughter now who's 1.5. And, my kids have had like very different upbringings from each other. Like the first two were, there during the deployments and all of that. And this little one like doesn't have that experience. So, yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, especially having children in both of those periods of your life. It's so easy or so crazy to see those differences between, those who are raised in that military lifestyle, experienced deployments, moving, And then, it's going to be interesting to see your little one, how, that shapes, and hearing the experiences from your other two as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. And they do still remember. Their memories are kind of vague, but they do still
Yeah.
remember it. Um, and but I think like there's good and bad, like there you get a kind of resilience and an ability to adapt to different things. My husband now was a Air Force child, so he spent his childhood moving all over the world. Um, and that made him able to be the way he is like in business now and interact with new people
Right.
um and all of that. At the same time, like it's you have those memories of like especially for older kids like having to make new friends again and all of that and that feeling of belonging. So I think like there's multiple angles to it.
Yeah.
But we're definitely raising our little daughter like with the knowledge of the military, and she's got her little Marine Corps shirt and everything. So
Yeah. Well, and that's the big thing too, is not necessarily experiencing the lifestyle firsthand, but going on the moves, experiencing the deployments and all of that. Like that is a huge part of being a military child, getting those experiences firsthand. But it's also, the way you're raised. You have military families have these characteristics of them where like you said, resiliency, they have a drive in them, that motivation to do something better, do something bigger, and have that grit and determination in them. And so it's not necessarily those characteristics of being, in a military base, going to a school on base, but it's also having a parent with military experience and, you know, instilling those in the next generation.
yeah, no, that's so true. I always called it like military mode. I feel like a
Yeah,
lot of like men in the military, like they
right.
have modes that they can like switch into kind of. And so like when they're with their family, sometimes they're still in military mode and
Right.
you
Yeah.
kind of like be like, all right, shift to family mode, like we're not
Yeah.
like in a unit or whatever. So
Well, and
um
that's so true because it's hard to flip that switch sometimes and realize you're in a different environment where it's safe and you don't have to constantly be on the lookout, or um you know you don't have to be the person in charge necessarily. You can lay back.
yeah, yeah. Or you don't get to be the person in charge.
That too. That
Sometimes,
too.
yeah, no, sometimes it goes both ways. Yeah.
Yeah. So it is one of those things where you don't necessarily have to be raised in the military life, but you have those characteristics and those traits in you that it's like you're still a military child, and your little one's going to be a military child no matter what. So that's just the way it goes.
And I think it's important, like, for, us to raise kids to understand like that lifestyle and the sacrifices. And, I feel like there's a lot, I think it's, only 1% of the population is in active duty military. So there's a lot of
Yeah.
people who really don't get it, and a lot of people don't support it.
Right.
I'm like, those are not going to be my kids.
Yeah.
They're to be in the military, but they're going to at least support it, like
Right.
they're going to understand it. So that's important.
Right. And there's so much, especially, I'm sure it happened prior, but because I'm now just seeing it, but there's a lot where, like you said, there's no support for their military. It's um, because there's not understanding. It's hard for, somebody who comes from a civilian family to understand the sacrifices, the dedication, the hard days that we've had as military families. And, you know, because they don't understand it, they have a different outlook on it, where we can say, okay, no, we've lived the lifestyle, we've had these experiences, like continue to share, continue to advocate for the support of the military because honestly, it's like it's taking a downhill decline.
Yeah, it's gotten very political now, and I think a lot of people don't realize that like not everybody in the military is political, like their um patriotism is like to the country and the mission and not a
Yeah.
person. So I think that is, important and a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah, and there is I think where a big misconception is it's done for the greater good. It's done for the whole country. It's done for, most of these service members who are active duty military, who's in the reserve, who's in the guard, we're never going to meet, and they're never going to meet us, but they know that they're doing this, for every single American who's in the country, not just one person.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah. So what was it like for you to, find the inspiration to take what you've experienced it and put it on paper?
Um, well, I always say so the stories in the book Homefront, none of them are based on real characters, um, or even necessarily real situations for the most part. But the emotions are real. So I feel like one thing I want people to be able to experience is the emotions involved in all of these scenarios that I set up. So one story is about a Navy wife who is alone while her husband's on deployment and lives next to another wife whose husband is in her same squadron. And she suspects that this woman's having an affair and kind of starts spying on her to figure it out. Like that didn't really happen to me, but but it kind of delves into all of these emotions of like loneliness and kind of like grieving the person who's left, grieving like the marriage that you had maybe before the military, or the what do you do if you're facing problems and then you're spending 9 months apart? So I feel like all of that is in there. So I put a lot of those emotional elements into it, and then also a lot of the place elements. I mean, they were such an inspiration. So one of them takes place in Virginia Beach, which is huge military town and my
Right.
favorite place I've ever lived, and I loved it. And all of those details of like living by, a base and the ocean and the community and all of that. Another one takes place in Florida, in the Pensacola area. So just kind of the memories of those places are really important in the stories, and all of the little details of like, the people who were there, what the people are like, and what does it feel like to be, on the boardwalk, with the planes going by over your head, and just all of those little things that I loved about being there.
Right. And there's so many aspects of the military life that you look from the outside in and you don't think that, goes on. You don't think, of those super hard days. You don't think of those days where it's like, oh, well, this is actually really enjoyable. Like I'm loving this place. Like you think of deployments, you think of moving, you think of a lot of heartbreak for some reason too. And so, there's so many aspects of the military life that are left unheard, uncaptured, and untouched. And so it's really important to start to dive into those emotions where, it's not necessarily heard.
Yeah. And a lot of times, like, you don't realize the value of a place until you've left it,
Right.
You were saying because you are going through all these things while you're there. But I have such good memories of like when we were in Meridian, Mississippi, and like there's nothing there. I mean, it's it's
Yeah.
very rural, but because of that, like the community was really strong, and there were a lot of social things, and there were, some great things about it. Like at the time, I didn't necessarily, see all of it, but like looking back, and then especially like now living, right near a city and the city life and all of that. It's just so different from those places.
And that's the fun part of the military life is you don't necessarily ever dream of living in some of these destinations and the military just sends you there. And, you get those experiences that are once in a lifetime and you didn't even request it. And like you said, that community is really what makes the lifestyle what it is. It's what makes it easier. And even in those places where you're living in the middle of nowhere, you have that community, you have that support system and group of people that you can rely on for anything. And even in those amazing tropical destinations that you can, experience, there's so many different ways that you can get involved in your community and still make the best out of even the worst situations that you might have.
Yeah, I really think it's so hard to recreate that community.
It
And
is.
it's such a strong part of the book too, like those feelings of community and then the feelings of missing that when you're not in it anymore. I think that, that shows up in a lot of places in the book.
Yeah.
And, like I don't know, I didn't realize while I was in it that when you're out of it, it's really hard to form like those same social bonds with people. And so, there you don't have like that automatic friend group the way that you do when you're
Right.
acting. So, yeah, that honestly, that was the best part. That was the best part in it, and it's harder in like the civilian world for sure. Everybody's got their own thing going on, and you have to like really work hard to find a group.
Yeah. You can't just, show up to a gathering and expect to meet, five new lifelong friends because that's just, it doesn't happen like that in the civilian world. Most people have their childhood best friends still. And, while you might have that in the military life, it's harder to keep hold of those connections. And so we just make, um, connections along the way with everyone and we start to form this really like a spider web of people all over the place and that's the best part is having somebody in every corner of the world to be able to go and visit and going back and seeing those people are just life changing but when you're in it and then you get so used to it you get out of it and you still have those people, but finding somebody else, finding a new friend who gets it is so difficult.
It's funny, like so the my book came out just a few days ago, and I've been hearing from a lot of like old friends that I had, and they're like all over the world now. Um, and people reach out, and it's like no time has passed. Like
Yeah,
it's like you're still friends. All those years
exactly.
later. Um, and even I just found out one old friend like lives 15 minutes from me. I had no idea. So.
Wow.
So we'll hopefully like, we're gonna reconnect and it's, and so it's like you were saying, like a lot of those are lifelong relationships.
Right. I lost connection with so many of my friends for 8 years. And then it's so crazy that, you friend each other on Facebook or you follow each other on Instagram and you can just, I mean, you watch everything, because that's what social media is. It's you can watch somebody's life from, even millions of miles away. But then when you talk, it's like, oh, we're picking right back up where we were 8 years ago. There's no time that had passed in these relationships that, were once everything because you find those people at your certain duty stations and you connect with them and that's it. But then, 8 years go by and you're like, oh, we still have that connection. Cool. Like
Yeah.
it's the best feeling ever.
Yeah. It's pretty powerful and it
Yeah.
goes all around the world.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yes. So the last thing I want to ask is what advice you would give to another military spouse?
I would say appreciate the good things. I think sometimes that's hard. Like I didn't necessarily appreciate them when when you're going through like things like moving or deployments or, it's hard to find a job, like that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of good things too. So, I would say looking back, like see those things. And then I think, like do something for yourself. I know a lot of like sounds like such cliche advice, but I don't know. Like one of the things that I did was like I spent a lot of those years focusing on writing, and
Yeah.
I would read a lot. Like I read and so much more than I'm able to now. And I took classes. Like I did like a drawing class. I did a class, on writing poetry. That was how I started writing poetry, was during those deployment years. I I taught classes. I did so many things that I don't have time to do now. And like when things start to get really busy in another life in the future, like you'll want to have taken advantage of maybe that downtime that you had, especially during those deployments.
Right. And that's the fun part of the military life, especially living on or near a base. There's always something going on that you can get involved in. And, most of them are free because they're resources to you. So classes, different events and activities that you can take part in. It's really incredible to see such a community come around. And like there's book clubs that just other spouses start, and um, you can always call someone and get coffee, or you never have to feel alone in the specs because there's always something to do to help, get you to where you want to be. And even though it's hard to get a job in the military life as a spouse,
Yeah.
there are so many resources that can be taken advantage of.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned the book club thing, because that's like such a great one. I love those. Part of them, like reading all these new things, and yeah, and I do a lot of book clubs. Like people reach out and like see if I'll be a virtual guest or whatever. I love doing that. And also like if anyone wants recommendations of like military themed books, I have so many good ones. So reach out, ask me, because I just have collected a wonderful list.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that note, where can listeners connect with you?
So you can find me on Instagram. I'm at Victoria Kelly Books. I'm Kelly. And then also my website is victoria-kelly.com. And I'm on Amazon. So those are the three best places to find me or my books, or start there and reach out. Like I love getting messages, and I always write back. So
awesome. Well, thank you so much, Victoria, for being on the podcast and sharing so many incredible experiences and how you're helping to give back to the military community.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to Grace of a Military Child and Life podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to give it a like, follow, and comment. Also, be sure to check out Instagram and Facebook at Grace of a Military Child and Life for more awesome content. For information on the podcast, Military Child Bigs and Littles, GoAMCL blog, or other resources, visit www.goamcl.org. You can also email me at Gracie, that's GRACIE, at GOAMCL.org with any questions or comments. To be a guest on the podcast, you can schedule it at www.goamcl.org/schedule a podcast, all one word, or contact me via social media or email. Stay tuned for the next episode where another incredible story is shared.